Welcome back to podcast 66 of 2022. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us the Oddsbreakers. Follow us on social media / the Oddsbreakers. This episode is being brought to you by BetRivers.com. For a 100% sign-up bonus, please visit BetRivers. Use the promo code ODDS22. Terms, conditions, location apply. And obviously, you can support the Oddsbreakers by visiting our website. Pick any premium capper to get their premium plays before the line moves. My friends, I am on vacation, as you can see from this backdrop right here, but I still wanted to bring you a great show today. And one of the best, if not the best, handicapper that I know, Mr. Las Vegas Cris, is going to come on and help us a little bit with some of his thoughts on NFL Week 5. We have a huge show today. I'm also going to go into some college football right after Cris is done, and ended up with a actual teaser play that we're going to give to you as well. So let's get started here. Without further ado, I'm going to bring in Mr. Las Vegas Cris. Cris, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We have Las Vegas Cris, and Cris is a contest expert as well as an NFL expert. I'm really happy to come on, and I'm not in the States, my man. I'm a little bit by the ocean here. I'm kind of hoping people can see the backdrop here. How you doing?
I'm doing this show under protest. I find it completely offensive that you take a vacation during football season. There's really no excuse for it, frankly.
There isn't. I got outvoted, as I do every year during fall break, and to either have the kids screaming at me at home or next to the ocean. We usually pick the ocean here, but I'm doing the best I can. And I can appreciate what you said. Doing it on protest. It is a distraction, but that's why you're here to help us out here and see if we can get through some of these very difficult times in the NFL. It's a very interesting week. We had a lot of injuries last week, Cris, and I got Dos Equis right here, so I'm actually when in Rome, living in the moment, my man. So what's been going on your side of the fence for the NFL?
I'm just excited. The season started off well, 20-12, and this is my favorite week of the season when the model starts to kick in and become reliable. So, I chart my record every week for all the years that I have been doing it, and I'm lifetime 60% week 5. So, hoping for similar or better results this coming week. Lots of plays.
Awesome stuff. That's good to hear. And I see you got your Hawaiian shirt on. I swear to God, I tried to find one because it would have fit a little bit better. And this is the closest thing I got, but it's probably more of a pirate shirt actually. But there's some flowers on that if you dig deep and look better. But really glad that you're off to a great start here in the NFL. And we have a huge slate coming on, starting out with a very interesting game in Denver. We have the Denver Broncos hosting the Indianapolis Colts. And I got to tell you, this Colts team has started off bad again this year. But this spread, as you can see, there's a lot of threes. There's some 3.5s here, Cris. I feel that there's going to be a buy point on the Colts. And I don't know if it's this week or not, but I think 3.5's too high. Denver was a little bit exposed last week against a very motivated Raiders team. I kind of thought that when they played the Niners, it was a little bit fraudulent because Jimmy Garoppolo was terrible that game. I'm going to lean towards the Colts here just because there's some upside with them. I know Jonathan Taylor is now going to miss this game, but I like Nyheim Hines. I just think this is a get up spot for them. So that's kind of the thought that I put into this one without knowing everything about the injuries. Do you have anything for the Thursday night game?
I don't think you could convince me to place a wager on this game. Obviously, Indianapolis is missing players again. They're a big disappointment. But if you look at their schedule, they can salvage their season pretty easily. They've got an easier road ahead of them than Tennessee does. But, now they've got to watch out for Jacksonville. And frankly, if all things being equal, I'd probably lean pretty heavily toward Jacksonville being able to win this division. I'm not a believer in Tennessee and the Colts. The wheels are falling off the bus with Ryan. I mean, I thought he was done already, and I kind of drink the Kool-Aid that other people were talking about and saying that he was going to be resurrected again, and just disappointing over there. But no, I can't play this game. My metrics come out to that this line should have been a 4, so it's not enough variance for me to get involved. I just don't have an interest in the game.
Denver does have a very good home field advantage up there in Mile High. So, yeah, good to hear that that's where you're at. And 3.5 to 3 is probably a dead area when your numbers are at 4. And I will tell you this, Jacksonville, like you said, was a pretty popular, almost like a trendy pick to win. I don't think a lot of people did get there. I think some people did. I went with Peterson as coach of the year, which was a much bigger payout. So I'm kind of hoping that if Jacksonville sniffs the playoffs here, that thing could possibly come through for us.
Yeah, I actually bet the Jacksonville alternate line a little bit higher than the real line, because I thought if they were either going to do pretty darn well, or we'd see just a little bit of a better version than we saw last year. So right now it's too early to tell for sure, but they've only played one home game and they're 2-2. But you put aside the last half of last week's game and they've looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's true. It was Lawrence that gave away that game, so close to the cover. One of my losses last week. How do you fumble the ball and it turns it over 4 times? It's like, just get half those fumbles back and we covered that thing if they don't win outright. But I feel that Lawrence gave it away, but Jacksonville is a very good team, and we will get to that game. But the next one on the docket is the Giants versus the Packers, rotation 451, 452. Packers about 8.5 here, most books, unless there's teaser protection. Like we know about all those books, giving out 9+ money. My problem with the Packers, Chris, when they're laying big numbers, unless it's against the Bears, it's kind of like how it worked out last week. That pick 6 really hurt them last week. They play slow, so they play to win the game. Aaron Rodgers is very good if he needs to win the game to get him in position to do it, but it's almost like they play so methodically. It's hard for them to get bigger margin. I mean, that's my feeling with this. And the Giants are a terrible team. My number is around 9.5 personally on this game. So it's right in the dead zone for me. But maybe you have something a little bit better than I do for the Packers versus the Giants.
Well, I'm looking at the board and it says 8 to 8.5, and my numbers come in at 8.09 and 8.25. So won't be anything in this game for me. I agree with what, Green Bay has no choice but to, play slow and methodic. With the rookies that are in there and the unfamiliarity, Rodgers doesn't feel comfortable yet. It's, an easier way to just, keep the game in hand and avoid falling behind. So it's a good strategy. Minnesota's been they're playing the Giants. Giants, geez, this Galladay, what a horrible pickup. I was so happy that the Lions didn't sign him, and I've said it for 2 years. The guy will never stay healthy, and he doesn't, and now he's unhappy there. You've got a horrible quarterback situation there. I think the receivers are not getting the ball. I believe I was listening to earlier, and that's a concern. I'm not a believer in these Giants. I went through each division, each team yesterday, and I was kind of cautiously optimistic about the Giants, but I just think they're going to wallow in mediocrity at the very best. Some predicted, quite a jump, but we're not going to see it. They're like 23rd in offense and defense, so very mediocre so far.
Yeah, I agree with that. They are mediocre. I mean, they're not the worst team in my power ratings, but they're not that far from the worst team. I think they're number 25. That's where I have them ranked. So worse.
Yeah, I've got them at 24. Green Bay's probably a good teaser leg. Everybody and their grandmother's doing Green Bay and Tampa Bay. I haven't played any teasers. Teasers have been a big loser this year so far. So cautiously treading those.
Yeah, I looked at them for a teaser as well. I might get there, but I'm not there yet. I'm going to see where this kind of closes out, and where it looks like Daniel Jones is practicing today too. So maybe the line goes down a little bit, and you get a -1 on your teaser rather than a -1.5 rather than a -2.5 too. So we'll keep looking at that one. Let's move on to the next one: Steelers versus Bills, and the Bills 14 across the board, pretty much seeing right here. This is a interesting game, being that the Bills coming off a really hard-fought game against Baltimore. It was a frustrating game for me because I made a bet on the Bills at the 3. It went up to 4. I should have bought back probably, but and it settled at 3 for a lot of reasons. But they're sitting there on the 1-yard line with about almost 2 minutes left, and they could have scored a touchdown. Instead, they get that yard for a first down and just ran the clock off and kick it, which is what you're supposed to do. And I've won many bets that way. But the Bills are very powerful, and my number says to probably lay off. I'm at 15.5 on this. Being that's 14, there's really no value for me. It's a massive spread in the NFL. I hate laying double digits early in the year. So maybe you have something a little bit better for me on this game where it's at.
Well, the Bills are fighting a lot of injuries, and they haven't looked their normal self. Obviously, they came out game 1 very strong, and I felt like I was going to have to be eating crow when I said at the beginning of the season that I anticipated Buffalo to finally have some obstacles this season at some point, and sure enough, they're fighting the injury bug. This is a strange game because it's a look-ahead game. Buffalo's got an important game next week. It's easy to overlook this Pittsburgh team, and what's really bad is when you've got the players already saying, "Well, this is going to be a rebuilding year," and it's week 4. So that's not a good sign for Pittsburgh. I expected more out of Pittsburgh. Trubisky, I'm 100% wrong on. The guy's a disaster. Might as well go with Pickett. I think he's going to make some great plays, and I think he's going to foul some stuff up. So it's going to be interesting. It probably leads to more scoring. What is the total in that game?
It's 46.5, Chris. And to be honest with you, I didn't upgrade the Steelers at all for the Pickett move. I think they might even they could be even a little bit worse or more erratic. He might force some throws against a ball hawking defense. That's where that margin could come from. So I'm not touching the game, but yeah.
No, you can't change the value, but as far as the metrics go, 14 is very short, believe it or not. And I speak to other people that use similar models, and it's a full touchdown short, believe it or not. But like previously mentioned, it's a look-ahead game. You've got a new unknown quarterback. You've got a lot of injuries with Buffalo. It just seems like it's a stay away sort of situation. But I know people are worried about double-digit favorites in the NFL, and I stayed away from them for years. They were just automatically omitted. But there hasn't been a year since 2015. Every single year, double-digit favorites have won at a higher rate than 57%. So it's never fallen below 57% since the change in rules and the extra points. That's pretty significant. So you can't just arbitrarily say, I'm not going to play double-digit favorites.
Well, that's interesting. That's a great number, 57% for double-digit favorites over the past few years. So something to keep in mind. Yeah, the Steelers' defense is like Swiss cheese to me, especially without T.J. Watt. So you can definitely see margin happening if needed to make it a very comfortable victory for the Bills. Let's move on to the Dolphins versus the Jets. The Jets are dogs, home dogs by about 3 points. The Dolphins already announced Teddy Bridgewater is going to be starting this game. Total on this game, I have 46. Seems a little high for a Teddy Bridgewater game, to be completely honest with you. But then again, the Jets are so erratic. They give away a lot of turnovers with Wilson there, and I don't think there's much of a difference between when Flacco and Wilson changed up either. I was on the Jets last week just because I was fading Pittsburgh. I wish I used them in more areas with the Jets because I was right about that one. But the Dolphins I have is a pretty strong team, and you wonder if they had 9 days to kind of give Bridgewater a little bit more of a start to the game, a nice little play set. A lot of quarterbacks come out strong when they're not, just because of the scheme that they're getting from the coach. But then you worry about them a little bit later when they're just kind of calling random plays. So my number on this game is more of a closer to 2, actually. Let's see here. Oh, no, sorry. My number on this game is 5.5. I have the Dolphins favored 5.5. What are your thoughts?
What I don't like is when you have a young quarterback like Zach Wilson running his mouth. I think that really works. I didn't hear his exact comments, but I heard some commentary that he was, chirping and anticipated having a good, great game. And I don't know what he said exactly, but not a good move, so to speak. I'm sort of a believer in Miami. Jets have been, fortunate to be where they are. 2-2 is good for them. Miami, Bridgewater's fine because he's not going to make those dumb mistakes. I mean, he's not going to throw the ball downfield and light up the scoreboard. But he's also, what's really important when you've got a reserve quarterback in, is just don't make any mistakes. Leave it to the defense, leave it to the running backs, and short dump off passes, and play it safe. And Miami could find some success with that. The Jets are kind of let's see where they're sitting here. They're certainly a lot better than last year statistically so far, but we're only through the first quartile. And I really thought Miami would be rated higher in my rankings, and they're not. So they're not doing. I think that they're a little flashy and maybe getting a little bit too much benefit of the doubt. I think this game's going to be closer than people think.
Okay. I downgraded about 3.5 points from Tua to Bridgewater for now. I wasn't sure exactly how to make that. I know Teddy B's a capable backup. I didn't like what I saw last week, of course, but the Jets could be meddling. But I think what you said when you hit it on the nail with Zach Wilson running his mouth, what are you doing, kid? I mean, you're giving complete power to your other team and motivation to, play complete 100% against this team. When you hear stuff, players will get up for that game and play every play extremely hard to get a big win and try to embarrass somebody. So that is definitely concerning for Jets fans or Jets backers here, not touching the Jets side. Haven't decided on the Miami side. Let's move on to Atlanta versus Tampa Bay. And this is going to be an interesting game because you have a lot of noise in the marketplace on Tom Brady. I guess they hired divorce attorneys from what you hear. I mean, I know how that is when you go through relationships. I've been through many of them, and it can be very taxing on the mind. Tom Brady seems to be above that. I think that would have happened already, but it's just hard to play them as a big favorite against a pretty scrappy Atlanta team. But I'll tell you this, after losing 2 games in a row like they did, you almost feel like this is a spot for Tampa to get a max effort. My power number is 11.5 because I'm not high on the Falcons like the market is. And then my algorithm is 7 just because of how poor Tampa's been when they are injured. So the algorithm doesn't factor in, obviously the injuries they dealt with. So I guess that would put it somewhere in the middle. What are your thoughts?
He does seem to be handling this divorce situation amazingly well. He's playing fine, but it's a struggle when you're missing your receivers and your offensive line is injured, and you're changing out centers. You've got a new coach. No, you don't have a new coach. Yeah, you do have a new coach.
Daniels.
And I just think Tampa Bay was due for a letdown. I just don't see they were a top 3 defense last year. They're trending at the bottom 10, bottom of the top 10 with what I have them at this year so far. And offensively, they're way down there. They're not even the top half of the league so far. So I do anticipate that they'll pick that up, and Atlanta, could be the perfect team to do that against. Yeah. Atlanta's been an amazing surprise so far, and as long as Mariota stays healthy, which I don't anticipate he will, it keeps them going. They're not using. I think Pitts is practicing, so it'd be nice to get him involved in that offense for Atlanta, especially with Patterson out. Is his name Patterson or Peterson?
Patterson.
Yeah, okay.
Patterson played with, I believe, the Bears for a little bit too. So
he's damaged goods.
Yeah, he has performed very well for this team, Cordero Patterson, and it's he's been banged up though, and the spot says Tampa, but you're right. The Atlanta's putting up 25.8 points a game. Tampa's putting up 20.5. There's something wrong there, but the more healthier they get, the more Brady-like they get. This will be a popular teaser, like people say. And I just think that Atlanta might be a little bit fraudulent, but I've been wrong before.
It just seems like, you get in this situation, and I'll use Kansas City as an example. Last year, I believe it was, where I wrote up the game and I said, teams like Tampa Bay and Kansas City, they scare you. Buffalo, it's scary because that they can possibly break out and just make you feel like an idiot for taking the other side. And I said it about Kansas City last year. At some point, you have to stop with what your perception of a team is. And at some point, a team is what their stats say they are. So you can't sit there and live betting in fear and what ifs. If you have some sort of numbers that you're working off of and you can see what the situation really is, that can make you feel better about these situations. You can notice how certain times lines are overinflated. And you're getting a little extra value just out of that fear concept. So it's a tough game. It is, because my brain says Tampa Bay, Atlanta due for regression, and Tampa Bay could just annihilate them. And then another part of me says Atlanta's feisty, and they're, at least back tour ready.
I have the same feeling, and great comparison. Kansas City's the same thing. They'll have that one game where they keep just scoring, make you feel dumb, and then they'll have a game where they're dropping some easy team. It's just very interesting stuff in the dynamics here. Trying to predict creatively where to bet these teams. It's so interesting, and really part of sports betting. That's more of an art. Let's move on to the next game: Seattle Seahawks versus the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints are about a -5, -5.5. The total of this game is 48. No, sorry. The total on this game is pretty low, I think, on this one. I can't find the game total. 46. So with this game, Chris, Geno Smith has surprised me a bit. And, he looked really great against a bad defense last week. But at the same time, the Saints have a decent defense. I'm not sure who's starting at quarterback yet. This line says pass at 5.5 to me until we get more information.
Well, Geno Smith has the all-time highest passing completion rate at 77% after 4 games. He's got an excellent QBR. He's done it for 4 games. You have to kind of respect that. And there is a history of backup quarterbacks riding the bench for years. And when they get their chance, they've learned, they've evolved, their mental expectations of themselves, and they get a better perspective on what being a quarterback is really about. And sometimes you do get these backups that all of a sudden surprise you and can make some really nice runs. He's very athletic. He's making the smart moves. He's not making dumb mistakes. And I don't anticipate that all of a sudden he's going to become a moron again. So you have to kind of respect that. The Saints obviously are stumbling. They're underachieving considerably. Where do I have them? I mean, geez, kind of surprised how low I have them rated. So certainly a difficult position with them coming back from another ridiculous loss. They have 2 losses that were just stolen from them by referees. Tampa Bay, they would have won that game, and then Lattimore gets kicked out, and then they had a bad phantom pass interference call against them. And then we know last week there were 2 straight penalties on the Saints that shouldn't have been called that allowed Minnesota to score that go-ahead touchdown. So it just seems like they've got a dark cloud over them. We don't know who the hell is going to be playing. Is Kamara in? Is Thomas in? Is Winston in? It's always something with this team. You've got the new coach, and that's kind of an issue also. It's a shame because Dalton was very serviceable last week. And I don't know whether he's rejuvenated or not, but when he was in Dallas and Chicago, I thought he'd be fine when the starting quarterbacks went out, and he didn't do well. So you kind of had to write him off, but he did okay yesterday or last week. So we'll just have to see. It's a crazy, wacky game. There's a lot of people on Seattle, and there's some people that have, the Saints are their favorite bet of the season so far. So two-way action on that game.
All right. I'm not touching it until I find out more information, and I might not touch it even then. I don't even know how to rate Winston anymore with the way he is. They had that game, and they were screwed on penalties there, and then Winston gave away the cover. We had the cover at least. Winston gave it away. It was tough. Texans versus Jaguars. Jaguars getting a lot of respect, -7. What's funny about the Jaguars, I've been on them a lot, I think every week including last week when they finally lost. But this is a division game, and the Texans can be a little feisty. I have them as my worst team with the Bears, to be honest with you. And the Washington Commanders are right next to them as well. But, in saying that, the Jaguars are prone to turning the ball over so far, and they're laying a big, massive spread at home. And I remember last year when the Jaguars visited the Texans, they got their ass kicked. So you wonder if the Texans are kind of like, this team is one we can beat. Let's, rally the troops. It's a big spread for a team that's not usually laying points. So that's what scares me a little bit. I'm guessing the Jaguars are going to be a big teaser leg for some people. I don't like teasing this game. I see a blowout or them losing outright. What are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of had higher hopes for Houston this season, and I just thought that they could be feisty. But Lovie Smith strikes again. They're doing okay despite him. Frankly, I expect there's a lot of veterans on that team trying to stay in the league and play hard and do well. They have a few positive attributes to their offense now, and most recently it hasn't gone well, but they have the potential to do well. And surprisingly enough, I don't have Houston in the bottom 5 offensively or defensively. So that in itself, tells you I don't have them as a bottom 5 team. So I'm not dismissing them in the least. And I think that they can show up. The thing with Jacksonville, you're talking about the rain. Things just kind of fell apart on the road. First-year head coach, young quarterback that didn't fare well in rain in college. You know what? I'm giving them a pass on that because they still rank very highly. And I'm a believer. I think that they can do it. And, they get their second home game of the season, some home cooking, some better weather. And as you mentioned last time, Houston beat them. So maybe they'll have that in their minds. And put a little extra effort in. But I laid the 7. I like -7 in this game. I don't love it, but the metrics have this, as value. And I'm going to ride with the metrics, even though I know Houston can backdoor this, and this game could be a cluster mess.
My metrics have it 11. And my power ratings have this as a lot lower, 5. That's why I didn't play it. I was way between it. Maybe I need to up Jacksonville a little bit more, if that's where I'm at. So I usually later in the year, it's a lot more metric based. But right now there's been some easy strength of schedules, so I'm not quite perfect yet on that. But interesting. I'm glad that you let us know that you laid the 7. That sounds like a play. So thank you for that. Let's move on to the next game. And we have the Titans versus the Commanders. The Commanders are home dogs, but it's not at 3. It's 2.5. The Titans, little road chalk at -2.5. When I see a +2.5 in the NFL lately, Chris, I almost think it's the right side. I mean, it seems to be that the Commanders are in the same situation as the Raiders were last week. Of course, the Raiders are a better team, but the Raiders put one on the Broncos. They couldn't stop. They were everywhere. This team was just every single play playing 100%. After that coaching meeting that they had, it fired them up. So they played out of their minds. I said that the Raiders could beat any team that day. But the Commanders, they're 1-3. Ron Rivera is not the nicest coach in the world. I can't imagine him not doing the same thing with this team. Now, the Commanders are very banged up on the offensive line, a little bit on the defensive line. They've been sucking in the trenches, and that's where they've been getting beat. But they have skill at the receiver positions. The Titans are banged up all over the place. And I thought that was just more Matt Ryan losing last week than the Titans win. I thought the Titans and quarterback Tannehill did well enough to beat them, only due to Matt Ryan's mistakes and the Colts just being the Colts, man. I'm close to taking the dog here just based upon the spot. But of course, just looking at how bad Washington did, I have this a 4-point spread. So they should be 4 according to my power ratings, Chris. And I can pull up my algorithm, and I have that as my algorithm has it closer to pick 'em, to be honest with you. So what do you got on this one?
My numbers say the exact same thing on the pick'em. Washington is. I kind of expected them to make a little bit of noise. They were the forgotten, unspoken team off season that nobody really talked about at all. And people forget that they played the toughest schedule in the NFL last year, at least the top 3. The previous year, they had a really good defense, and they seem to have added a lot of good parts since then. So I thought that they would fare better. And obviously after 4 games, they're not. And I don't know what the problem is there, but it doesn't look like it's going to turn around anytime soon, but it could. And Tennessee, I just don't see why people think very much of Tennessee. They were never once in my top 10 in metrics, not a single week last season. They ended up with the number 1 seed by a miracle, but flamed out. They're really bad on metrics so far this season, embarrassingly bad. They're not anywhere close to an average team at this point, based on what they've done. But I can't take a side on either one of these teams. It's not even a good game. I don't know.
Well, this goes to your rule, Chris. When 2 shitty teams play each other, you bet the dog, take the points.
Yeah, I mean, I lean very slightly toward Washington just because I think Tennessee is just they're on a rebuilding path, in my opinion. Now, they could be proven wrong and they could turn it around miraculously, but so far what they've shown is not anything good.
That's correct. And it's a massive spot for Washington. We'll keep an eye on that game. Bears, Vikings, Chris. Vikings -7. I believe the total of this game is about 44 last time I checked. Yeah, it is 44. the Bears are who we thought they were, is what I want to say, because I had them low and I bet the under 6.5. They got that first win very fraudulently, and then the Texans beat themselves. My number's bigger than this, Chris. It has the Vikings winning by double digits. I'm going to wait to see you talk me off of it and see if you have anything nice to say about my Bears.
I'm just shocked that they have wins. I mean, it's amazing. I saw a statistic that there are receivers that have more catches than Fields has completions.
That's probably true, especially when you look at Cooper Kupp or somebody, you know.
So, they're trying to baby this guy, and I think they're babying him too much, frankly. If I'm not mistaken, they have yet to allow him to throw deep and take risks. And I think you need to, grow from those risks, frankly. I've got nothing in this game. I think Minnesota's been a little bit of a disappointment. They're coming back from London. Surprisingly enough, their defense is about equal to their offense. Their defense last year was really, really bad, and it's playing better this year. So just something to, make a note of and notice. It's still not a great defense, don't get me wrong, but it's much better than last year's, while their offense is certainly underachieving. I predicted that they'd be the number one or number two offense in the league, and they're not remotely close yet. So nothing in this game. I can't play this game.
Well, that Eagles game really threw them off on the metrics. I mean, if you take away that game, they're probably a bit higher on offense than 13th in EPA, for example, 22nd in EPA and defense, Chris. And I agree that I thought their defense would be better, but the Bears are so bad that they could completely get shut out, in my opinion, because their offensive line can't block anybody, and they now lost Cody Whitehair possibly for this game, which is their best offensive lineman. So their offensive lineman is terrible, and they just lost their best guy. So think of that. I think Fields is going to be running for his life. I think that Kirk Cousins very good at home, and this could be just a walk-away game for them. Probably still reeling from the Lions loss. I don't love the big travel to London, but hey, like you've always said, man, travel's gotten a lot easier on these guys over the years. So
that's one of the things I'm noticing. God, I've heard some really bad content this week. Just shaking my head at the stuff that people are focusing on. And if you think a trip to London, which is about the same distance as it is from Seattle to Miami, these people fly in comfort, for gosh sakes. I love traveling. There's if you don't have to deal with the hassles of a lot of different things that they don't have to deal with as far as logistics, and all you got to do is get on a plane and go to a hotel. That's not hard at all.
No, especially when you're away from your kids screaming at you. It's not the worst thing in the world. It might even be a benefit that they get to watch a couple movies on the way home and play some cards with their buddies. That's very true. I'm laying the points with the Vikings at 7. I think it's way too short. Let's move on to the Browns versus the Chargers, Chris. Dang it. I'm seeing 2.5 here. Plus 100, minus 110, minus 105. I took 3. And I wanted to give this away as a play, but I can't really give it away as a play right now at 2.5 that it's painted all over the place. I have a nice write-up even prepared here. But what I want to say anyway is the Chargers shouldn't be laying road chalk against an average team. I don't have the Chargers that much higher than average at all. I think they're very injured. I think the Browns last week were a little bit of a fraudulent score. They did outgain the Falcons by 70 yards. They just, I think people over-adjusted for that loss. And they might get Myles Garrett back. That was in that car accident. A couple other guys as well. But the biggest thing for me is the Browns have a bad weakness against the run, but the Chargers have that weakness on offense, only ranking 27th in rush EPA at only 2.7 yards per rush. The Chargers give up 5.4 yards per rushing attempt. And I think Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is just going to run all over them. They're going to control the time of possession. They're going to run down their throats. They're not going to let Herbert play the game. I think the Browns win outright. But, at 2.5, I don't like it as much as 3. But that was the play I was going to give out at the 3 for 2.5 stars. What are your thoughts?
I like the Browns all the way down to pick. They've got to be pissed. They really should have been coming out of this first quartile 3-1 or 4-0, and they're only 2-2. And the Chargers are kind of in the same boat. They've got their team put together with duct tape and spit, and they're underachieving. They don't look anywhere close to the elite team that people thought that they would be this year. And all my metrics support that. Their defense is, bottom third of the league. And even their offense, which was certainly expected to be top 3, isn't sniffing the top 10. So I have Cleveland, as mediocre as they've played, rated higher offensively and defensively than the Chargers. I cannot figure out, and you kind of inferred it, they're an average team at this point. How can they be laying points on the road to anybody, let alone Cleveland, who may technically end up being the better team by the end of the season? They have a lot of tools. They've been fighting these injuries. They might get some people back this week. But if you can just get adequate quarterback play, the Browns can play with any team, frankly. They have underachieved a little bit, but they can play. They have the players.
Interesting stuff. I'm glad that we have some agreement on that. It's Browns all the way for me as well. I suppose the 2.5 is safe. Maybe you can get a 3 again if you wait a little bit. This will be a big teaser play if it sticks at 2.5 anyway for most bettors. Let's move on to the Niners versus the Panthers, Chris. And here's my problem. If I give the Panthers a home field advantage, my number's about 6.5. If I give them no home field advantage, I have the Niners favored by roughly 8. So do I not give them a home field advantage? What are your thoughts on the Panthers Niners? Niners short week, so that's one thing.
Yeah, that's not a. I'm glad I don't have to play this game. Frankly, I do show that the line is short. I think Rule is going to be very lucky to make it to the bye week, and they've got a lot of tough games ahead of them. The Boo Birds are out. Mayfield is throwing pop-ups and sailing passes past his receivers. He isn't even playing adequate. They're another example of where I'm wrong. I thought he would fit in nicely there. I thought he would be a bargain. And they're calling for Darnold, if you can believe that. McCaffrey's dinged up once again, and they weren't even using him much. We kind of thought that was an intentional strategy. It was probably because he was injured all along. So I can't get behind Carolina, and off a short week and a big win, it's a potential flat spot for the 49ers. So it's a game to just kind of keep your eyes on. The total seems, I don't know, San Francisco could roll all over them. So I'm not so sure about that low total.
Steve's got a question. How's Baker still in the league? Well, because he came from Lincoln Riley's system. If he didn't come from Lincoln Riley's system, he wouldn't even been drafted into the NFL possibly. I think that, Baker is still perceived by a lot of people as a starting quarterback. He hasn't been a starting quarterback in my numbers for a long time. But I'm really happy you laid 4.5 with the Niners. That's a fantastic number there, Steve. At 6.5, it's heads Carolina, tails California, like the song is. I don't have an opinion on that myself. Let's move on to the next one. Cowboys Rams. This was 4.5 earlier. Now it's 5.5. Some Rams love came in. but it's still not at the key number of 6. I was kind of hoping it would dip lower, Chris. I've had my eye on this game. The Rams have owned the Cowboys. Now the Cowboys don't have their quarterback. The Rams should be reeling from that loss against the Niners last week. You can say short week, but a short week doesn't matter that much to me when they're coming off a loss. The Cowboys have a good defense, but it's not good against this coach for some reason, and Sean McVay. So my numbers on this game are about 6.5. Probably should be a little bit more, but what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I think it's interesting. It's a look-ahead game for Dallas. They've got Philadelphia on deck. I heard somebody somewhere say that this is a huge matchup, and they're going to be thinking ahead. And boy, I wasn't buying that analysis. I just don't think that happens like it did in the era where you and I grew up. The horse and buggy, but so you've got the look ahead spot. You've got the backup quarterback who's doing pretty well. Their defense is holding up nicely. I think Dallas is live to win the division. Certainly can't hand it to Philadelphia. The Rams are underachieving so far. Their metrics don't look that great.
Oh, they're terrible. My numbers are terrible on them.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty dire, frankly, and this is the one team. I argued all last week with people that thought I was off my rocker to like San Francisco. So it's odd that you have professionals so far apart where we both thought the same thing last week. Like, how can you like the Rams? And they were like, how can you like San Francisco? This is ridiculous. This is easy.
Chris,
and
last week.
You just never get arguments like that, which I find odd and curious. I don't dismiss it. I want to know why. Somebody else on Telegram this morning was pumping up the Rams, and I wanted him to support it. What are you seeing here? That they're, a quality team. This is a difficult situation for Dallas to come into on the road. As you mentioned, some dubious history in the past in this matchup with the coaching. Look ahead game. Rams, they need a win. Bad loss, short week. A lot of variables in this game. I think it's going to be a hell of a game to watch. I'm looking forward to watching it for sure.
Well, I would have went 3-1-1 in my contest last week instead of 2-2-1 if I didn't panic and switch the Niners, which I bet the Niners early in the week. And I was just like the Niners left tackle, Trent Williams, and just hearing all this noise from sharp people like you have on the Rams. And instead I got a big L on that one because I also teased the Rams. So I sitting here with both sides like, why did I even do this? I could have just stuck with my guns on the Niners and not took a couple extra losses that I did. So I was very frustrated with myself on that one. Jimmy G, I was also a little worried about because he looked so bad against the Denver Broncos. But that's life. Let's move on to the Eagles versus the Cardinals. Now, this was 6. It's down to 5.5 and 5 in some books, Chris. This game is frustrating to me because the Cardinals have that guy, and I feel like he could win any game, and he could lose any game too with Murray. The total on this game is a high total at 48.5. You figure the Eagles are going to have a flat spot. If it wasn't for those turnovers, the Eagles lost that game against Jacksonville last week. It wasn't for all those turnovers. It's just there's got to be a point where they regress. I am not high on the Cardinals roster, minus maybe J.J. Watt, but mostly Kyler Murray's just kind of getting these guys to the next level. They're a very backdoor type team. They could be down by 12, backdoor you. And that's what worries me a little. There's no value on the Eagles to me. What are your thoughts?
I hear a lot of people talking regression because there are some teams with some extreme differentiation from what their expectation were, what the expectations of them were. But you can't play that game. It's sort of like trying to step in front of a streak. You don't know which teams are going to regress and which teams are going to go forward. So you really just have to kind of suck it up and, go with what's happening this year. And of course, some of those teams are going to regress, but they're not going to all regress at the same time anyway. So it's not like and regressing team, for Atlanta, you could bet Atlanta this week and they could regress and still cover and you win your bet. So you'll see that type of situation throughout each NFL season where, a team or teams are winning or losing continuously, but not covering or which is kind of nice where you get the best of it, so to speak. As far as this matchup goes, Murray, the play calling's been atrocious. They traditionally start off very well. So the fact that the Arizona has not started off well is a huge concern. Obviously they're playing without Hopkins, but he's not going to be back for 3 more weeks. And the only time it seems like they're doing anything is in the second halves and on broken plays or Murray creates them. Now, I'm not sure. I didn't see how the last week's game went, but I know that they looked miserable in the first half again. Looking at Philadelphia first half is something that that I'm going to definitely consider because Arizona hasn't been showing up in the first half, but they show up in the second half. And the Eagles and the Eagles are like the number 1 team in the league in the first half. They're averaging, last I checked, over 300 yards in the first half, which is more than a handful of teams have for full games. So, I mean, that looks like a solid look, first half Eagles, but I'm not sure about what else I'm going to do on that game so far.
Chris, I love it. That is fantastic. I didn't think of that. You're right. The Eagles are putting people away in the first half, leaving themselves a little susceptible sometimes, or at least not scoring a lot in the second half. And that's where the back door can happen. So I love it. You're going to probably get like a 3.5 first
3.
half.
It's 3.
Down to 3 without juice.
Oh, let me look here.
Yeah, it's just one of those games with a high total too, so they're expecting some points here.
Yeah, it's 315.
315. Yeah, that's fair. I would slam that immediately. That's a great look in my opinion. Fantastic look. Good find, Chris. Let's move on to a game that you and I might differ on. Baltimore hosting the Bengals. It's to 3. Baltimore's got a little -115 next to it in most of the books, -117 in some. Kind of tells you that the market thinks Baltimore's a bit better than the Bengals. I tend to differ a little bit on that, but what are your thoughts?
Baltimore's a concern of mine because I have them to win the division, and they're tied, and they shouldn't be tied. So a little frustrating for me there that there seems to be some chinks in the armor with some injuries and not being able to hold leads. And another major concern is Harbaugh is making bad decisions in multiple games. He has no clock management skills. I don't know what he's doing sometimes. He's been in the league too long to be making these rudimentary mistakes, frankly. So that's a concern there. I don't have. I think I have. Where'd this game go? I'm blind. Yeah, I mean, I had this at just under 3, not enough for me to play the game. I'm not a believer in Cincinnati. They've got a horrible schedule ahead of them. They've got a lot of primetime games, which just disrupts the flow of what the teams need to do. Their offense is wow, is much lower than anybody would anticipate, and the defense is performing okay though. So their defense is okay. Their offense is a disaster so far. They've got to correct that. And I'm just rooting for a Baltimore win here. I'm not going to invest any money in this particular game. I just don't see any value. I think there's just a little bit of uncertainty, but I think Baltimore will take care of business here.
I took the 3.5 early on Cincy, and now it's 3. To be honest with you, I bet Baltimore to win the division. I bet Lamar for MVP, and I think Lamar is having an MVP season. But when Baltimore's healthy, I probably put Baltimore a little bit better of a team than Cincy. But I think Baltimore's more banged up than them, so I have Cincy by a little bit more just at this moment here. But I like Baltimore to win the division because they have the way easier schedule. Cincy's got a first-place schedule. Baltimore doesn't. So that's kind of how the math went for me in that.
Yeah.
But as far as this matchup is concerned, Baltimore's keys to success is running the ball. And the Bengals kind of figured out Lamar in their running game the last 2 games last year, only allowing 114 total rushing yards and 115 the very next game. And then Lamar was in some weird situations and threw some picks. Bengals, where they can beat the Ravens is that they rank 8th in passing yards. But Baltimore ranks dead last, allowing 315. But I will say Baltimore's had the harder schedule. I don't know what the hell that Steelers performance was the first game, Chris. I think it was because they just signed those offensive linemen and they weren't gelling yet for the Bengals. So I think that was a big part of it. But I'm happy with my 3 and my 3.5, and I'm gonna say that the Bengals. It's going to be a very close game, and I think the Bengals could steal this one. This was my other play that I'm going to give out at the 3. But I would also wait on this because I think you're going to get a 3.5. So why don't you guys wait if you like what I'm saying here? If you like what Chris is saying, which we have a little disagreement, then you might want to take I guess, well, Chris is not taking it at the 3, but that's the way he leans. So
yeah, the 3.5. If it's one of those games. It's sort of like the Baltimore-Buffalo game last week. You can't fault anybody for taking -3 or +3.5 in this situation. This game should be close.
Yeah, it should be close. It's going to be. It could come down to the end. I doubt you're going to see a blowout like you did last year. Let's move on to the Raiders versus Chiefs, the last game, Chris. And I'm going to make this easy. The Chiefs own the Raiders. It doesn't matter what you saw last week. Just forget about it. The Raiders crumble. Derek Carr crumbles when he plays the Chiefs.
The Raiders beat him last year.
I don't think so.
I think they did. In Kansas City, didn't they?
No. I remember I bet the Raiders got my ass kicked on that one. So, no, Kansas City beat them last year. Maybe they won the first game. I remember the one in Kansas.
Yeah, no, the first game, I thought.
Kansas City's defense is better than it was last year to me. I have them ranked higher. I have Kansas City as a better team. I didn't think they missed a beat when they lost Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes is swinging the ball around. I don't trust McDaniel to stop Kelsey. They had their big game after the big lecture last week, beating the Broncos the way they did. I'm teasing it, though. I'm not betting the 7. It's 7.5 in a book, 2 right now. I'm teasing it down to 1. I think it's going to close 7.5 if you do like the Raiders. But this is a teaser that I'm going to play with the Commanders. Teasing the Commanders to +8.5, which is an ugly one. But like I said, the Titans are not a good team either. So that's going to be my teaser, Kansas City and the Commanders for 2 stars. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not wild about that Washington leg because Tennessee put up a lot of points last week, and they're going to use any opportunity they can to run up the score on teams, and Washington may be potentially in a give-up spot. We don't know yet, so it just seems like a more variance with that game. As far as the Kansas City side, I think that's pretty good.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I could have used the Vikings, but that I already played the Vikings, so I didn't want to be double exposed on that one. Now, Steve said Packers and Bucks. I think the Packers and Bucks are great teaser legs too. I just chose the Commanders because of the spot. I feel like Ron Rivera needs to kind of save his ass a little bit, and so does Carson Wentz. You might even see the next quarterback come in if they're getting beat pretty bad, and Heineke, which I think is better than Wentz this game. This is a do or die spot for the Commanders, and it's more of a spot tease. But I understand what Chris says; they are a terrible team. But I just don't have the Titans that big. I have no problem if you use the Tampa Bay Bucks or the Green Bay Packers, as long as you're getting under the 3 in the teaser. Fair enough.
No, yeah, no, the Packers, well, Jesus, there's something wrong with those Packers. There's something wrong with Tampa too. I mean, they'll probably both cover the teaser.
I picked Tampa because they lost 2 in a row here, and I just expect a massive effort a little bit before I play the Packers, which something they're just a little erratic. Rodgers throwing a pick 6 last week. What the hell was that? That's just completely uncharacteristic of Rodgers. Something's weird there too. So
yeah, but you know what? He needs to do that. He's cost himself. He's cost Green Bay wins over recent seasons because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want the interceptions, and he's got to take risks. And he's starting to do a little bit of that this season. So that's a good thing, actually.
That is a good thing. Well, Chris, we're out of time, my man. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing the NFL package with me while I am unfortunately drinking beer in Mexico on a beach and, going fishing, deep sea fishing tomorrow. So I'm sure you feel sorry for me.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for being distracted. I've been betting. I'm betting that Arizona or the Philadelphia first half.
That's wonderful. So that was you said Philadelphia first half, and I think you laid 7 on another one, right? Was that the Vikings or was that
Jacksonville? And I like Cleveland. And
okay.
It's going to be an interesting week. What I find remarkable is smart people. Visible people are on opposite sides of what I know I'm going to be on this week. And I'm very confident in my numbers overall. So it's going to be interesting.
All right. Well, make sure you guys check out Las Vegas Cris, one of the best out there. And when he's got a disagreement with you, you better pay attention and dig a little deeper. Thanks again, Chris, for coming on.
Yeah, screw you and your vacation.
I'll have a beer for you later. All right, my friends, now I'm going to get into a little college football here to finish things off. So basically, it's week 6, and I dug deep a little bit. I have a few plays for you. We're going to start out with Utah versus UCLA, plus 4.5. UCLA, a home dog. The total on this is 65. This is probably the best game in the Pac-12, with apologies to USC. UCLA took care of Washington last week pretty substantially, I thought. And people were low on UCLA because of the South Alabama game. But we found out South Alabama is a pretty dang good team. What I will say is that Utah, if you watch them play football, it seems like they're way better at home. Now, they do cover on the road too, but they're usually a dog on the road when this has happened. They're laying road chalk. Chip Kelly's a great coach for UCLA. You got to love the fact that UCLA is a positive 2.4 net yards per play to Utah at 1.78. I think UCLA's defense has gotten better. I think they were able to shut down Washington last week easily, and I think that they can score with Utah. Now, the thing is that let's say you're down by 7 points. Let's say you're down by 12 points, 10 points, 13, whatever. The back door is going to be open through the fourth quarter. You can see a field goal happen and then possibly a touchdown to get back in this game for UCLA once Utah goes into prevent. So even if UCLA is not really winning, I think you have a good shot at covering. But here's another thing. I think UCLA could be leading this game. This could be a point where Utah's got to come back because Utah's got a big look-ahead spot to USC for their next game. So I like UCLA plus the points, plus 4.5 for 2 stars. Kansas State versus Iowa State plus 2. This is one heck of a low total. If you ask me, 45 points, seriously? Yeah, I'd say that's low. Kansas State was really disrespected, I think, this year after that Tulane loss. They're much better than that. It was a flat spot. Iowa State struggled mightily versus Kansas. And I was on Kansas all year, as you know. But Kansas is still a little bit above average team. They are not with the TCUs, which you see that spread all the way up to 7 now. They are not with the Texases quite yet. But Iowa State isn't either. And seeing Iowa State struggle with Kansas, I don't care about their big Ohio win. They beat a fraudulent Iowa team that has no offense whatsoever. It was kind of that big spot. They finally won at the end of that game. The sack margin for the Wildcats is +7. I mean, it's massive. Their trenches are better than Iowa State's. They also have better red zone success rate. When Kansas State gets in the red zone, the coaching really plays. And they have the better red zone on defense and offense than Iowa State. So I just think laying a short road favorite of Kansas State -2 is fair. I don't think Iowa State's a great team yet. I think this is a rebuilding year for them. Kansas State is going to make a run at the Big 12 championship, lay the 2 for 2 stars. Wisconsin versus Northwestern. Now, you know I'm a Badger fan. This is Northwestern +10 at home, 44.5. Are you kidding me? After what we saw with the Wisconsin Badgers, you really are going to give them a road chalk against Northwestern, a team that always plays them tough? I mean, you think about the coaching spot, which usually promotes a play when a coach gets fired, the rest of the team steps up. They're usually a dog when that happens. The coach got fired, and they are a massive favorite against Northwestern. NU has been bad this year, but they at least beat Nebraska. They will be able to control it at home, I think, a little bit better because Wisconsin, they can't get margin unless they're rushing the football. Northwestern's defense, the only thing that's good about it is really their rush against the run. 4.25 yards per rush is what they're stopping opponents to. Well, the Badgers had a whole net +2 rushing yards against Illinois last week. Now they're laying 10 points on the road. The last 5 matchups, Northwestern's 4-1 against the spread. Their last 2 against Wisconsin at home, they won outright. What does Wisconsin do with laying this many? But take Northwestern. In Wisconsin, if they're behind, their pass EPA is 131st. That's worse than FIU. That's worse than New Mexico State, UMass. Their pass EPA is dead last. Wisconsin can't catch anybody. This is a stupid line. Take the +10 for 2 stars with Northwestern. This is almost too easy. Finally, North Carolina versus Miami. Miami's -4, total 65.5. After the performance against Middle Tennessee State, I mean, Miami you would think is a big get-up spot, but why are they laying 4 points against North Carolina? The Hurricanes haven't played anybody except for Texas A&M, and they played themselves out of that game too. And we saw how good Texas A&M's been lately after getting destroyed against Mississippi State. This is a big mismatch here for the pass. The Canes can't stop the pass. They rank 95th in opponent pass EPA, while North Carolina ranks 8th in pass EPA. They should be able to throw all over this Hurricanes team, even though it's in Miami. Miami's strength of schedule is 114th out of 131 teams, and they're still a net negative -0.34 yards per play, -0.34. That's horrible. You have that schedule, and you're not even positive yards per play. North Carolina's strength of schedule is 84th. Not that much higher, I guess, but they at least have a 1.28 net yards per play. The wrong team is favored here. I love the Tar Heels to win outright. Take the +4. Make sure you sprinkle that money line. We're going to give some sharp action out a little bit later via article at the Odds Breaker, so we're not doing the sharp side of the force today, but be checking your email for our sharp sides. We're just going to talk about the biggest sharp sides on college as well as the NFL when the article comes out. Just don't have time to do it today. Got to get back with the family on vacation, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the show that I was able to put together for you today. Thanks for bearing with us. You guys are the best out there. If you love this podcast, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps the algorithm on wherever you listen, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, any place that you can get the Odds Breakers. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. My friends, enjoy the rest of your week and go get some winners.